You have the skill, you've proven it to yourself over and over again in practice and casual games, but when the opportunity arises to prove yourself in a ranked game or tournaments, everything just seems to crumble. You seem to just get stuck in your head, thinking through moves that are usually automatic, overthinking the possibility of losing, and worrying what people will think of you when they see you slip up. You start to make amateur mistakes, one after another, and you quickly snowball towards inevitable loss. Now this is what it feels like to choke under pressure, and it's as if your skill is stolen right out of your hands, put into a box and locked up. You know it's there, you know what it's like to play with it, and even though it's so close, it's inaccessible. So how do you unlock it and get it back when it counts most? How do we get to a state of mind, a state of flow, where we can just unleash our potential and finally stop choking under pressure? The experience of choking is extremely frustrating because you know you have the potential to win and make progress, but for some reason, you just can't seem to do it when it counts the most. So how do you overcome this? Now this is a topic that I brought up when I got to meet Axe and Dabuz, two professional esports players who constantly play at massive tournaments while thousands of people are watching and judging them. And in their game of choice, it's one where there's no teammates to rely on, it's just them. And so for every major match, it's either a critical opportunity to advance their gaming career or watch it start to slip between their fingers. Yet, each of these players are well known for keeping their cool under this kind of pressure. They're able to stay calm and calculated, and as a result, they've each won major tournaments. The first key idea is to get into a state of mind where you aren't thinking too much, a state where your unconscious is doing most of the work.
The goal is when you get good at something is to be able to autopilot like most of your gameplay. Like 90 and 80% of your gameplay should be autopilot, and the last, let's say 20%, should be actively focusing on the important things as you're playing. Like I'm fighting a Rob, and I'm actively thinking to myself, what does he do after gyro? When does he shoot lasers? What are his ledge options? And when does he nair? Those are like my 4 real important thought processes when I'm playing a Rob. And then the rest of it's just autopilot. Like I'm just gonna camp this way, space this way, use this kind of pressure. I have a game plan in mind, I'm just gonna kind of like load it up like it's a CD, let it just play on its own.
Yeah.
We're making those small adjustments, because otherwise you think too much, you won't catch everything that you need to. Yeah. You think too little, you just die. And I think people tend to think too much, and then they kind of overload their circuits, and then they just start autopiloting, making bad mistakes.
So when you're in a game, you want to get into a state where you're just relying on mental dexterity that you've already built up in training, only making mental notes of a few key behaviors that your enemy's making. And by doing this, you'll free up most of your brain power to be used by your unconscious, allowing you to make automatic decisions, react without needing to think, and ultimately entering a powerful flow state. Alright, so we shouldn't be overthinking things during the game, but a major issue is that it sometimes feels impossible to get out of our own heads once that pressure is on. And when your heart is racing and anxiety is flooding your brain, it's hard to slip into the optimal autopilot or flow state that we require. So how exactly do we overcome this? When we think to professional sports players getting ready for a big game, we picture them in this sort of pre-game huddle where the coach gives an inspiring speech and gets everyone fired up. Or similarly, when we think of professional fighters, we think of them warming up intensely in the locker room, summoning a kind of primal bloodlust that powers them up for the fight. And this sort of pre-game ritual of getting hyped up is built into sports culture. So when initially approaching Dabuz and Axe, I assumed that their pre-game rituals and mindsets would be on par with professional athletes. I assumed that before a match, they would be hyping themselves up and playing each match like it's a life or death opportunity. But once I actually started talking to them, I realized I was wrong.
You go there, you sit down, you look at the screen, and you want to play it just like it's a friendly, you know, like you're just playing with a friend or something, but of course you're trying your best to win. But for me, when I get into the, I have to win this, let's go, let's do this, you know, like if I try to amp myself up like that, I end up getting even more nervous, and things kind of just crumble. Like if one thing gets to me, I'm like, like it just gets to me, and then I just start falling down, right? Yeah. But in friendlies, like if I get hit by something, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I just keep going, you know? So like just sitting down and thinking of the game, like when you go up to a match, thinking of it as not such a big deal helps me a lot. You know, if I win, awesome, sweet. If I lose, it's okay, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Having that kind of mindset really helps me a lot, to be honest, with tournament performance.
Now, this advice goes against my initial preconception, and even the advice from Dabuz was quite similar. Leading up to games, he tries to stay in a relaxed, chilled out mindset and just tries to get comfortable. And after hearing this advice, I decided to do a bit more research to understand why it works so well for them, opposed to getting hyped up like some sort of professional MMA fighter. And I quickly learned a few things. Now, despite us associating professional fighters with that pre-game pump-up mentality, many actually adopt a very relaxed mental state before a performance.
If you look at the greatest competitors in the world, greatest physical athletes, Marcelo Garcia, who I trained with for many years, who I own a jiu-jitsu school within the city, he's probably the greatest grappler to ever live. And if you watch Marcelo in a world championship, he would be sleeping literally minutes before a Mundial's semifinal or final, sleeping. But you've never seen anyone turn on more intensely. And if you look at great fighters, people think fighters are like jacked and intense, but they're not. Like, they're actually very relaxed. The greatest fighters are super relaxed when they're not fighting. But when they're in the battle, you wouldn't believe the intensity.
And just having observed Marcelo, certainly heard stories about, say, Floyd Mayweather before gigantic fights.
Yeah.
And I heard a friend of mine who knows him said he walked into his dressing room after Floyd was like, "Yeah, sure, come on in." He's like, I don't want to interrupt you. You must be prepping. And he's like, "No, I'm either ready or I'm not." And he was just sitting down watching some TV.
Yeah.
Now, this is profound to think about. That fierce fighter or athlete who performs with immense intensity is likely spending the moments leading up to the game in a state of complete relaxation, and in some cases going from sleep to peak performance in a matter of minutes. So what does this mean for esports players? Should we be getting ourselves fired up before a big game, or should we be trying to stay calm and casual? Well, it really depends. Your activation level is going to be different from other players, and more importantly, your activation level is different for each type of performance. Now, this term, activation level, is a psychological term that describes the ideal balance of anxiety or arousal when it comes to performance. And it's shown in research on athletes and demonstrates that performance is best at a moderate level of arousal, but will worsen if too high or too low. And on a graph showing quality of performance and level of arousal, this looks like an upside down U-shape that moves from level of tiredness and boredom up to an optimal activation level and then back down towards anxiety and panic. Now, a key to understanding activation level is to think of how it applies differently to different performances. When it comes to something like an endurance sport like a triathlon, many like to get into a calm mental state before the race. But with something like a 100-meter sprint, those athletes may want to get themselves completely amped up with music or motivational speeches. But when it comes to something like competitive gaming, you don't need to be physically hyped up. In fact, too much physical energy will just make you jittery and throw off your fine motor skills. So, in most cases, getting yourself hyped up is just going to push you past that optimal activation level into a state of anxiety. And so, in most cases, you'll just want to focus on reducing the pre-game tension as much as possible. And this is why Axe and Dabuz have both adopted pre-game mindsets and rituals of just chilling out and even treating the important tournament matches like casual games. So from the advice that these players provided, we can extract 3 big lessons. And the first lesson is to have a game plan of what to look for during a match. Now, Dabuz mentioned that against a particular enemy, he's looking for when exactly they use certain abilities so that he can start to predict them. He also looks for what they might do immediately after they use a particular move, perhaps looking for opportunities to attack when they are vulnerable. And he focuses on things like their ledge options, so he can create the right kind of pressure when they're off stage. Now, depending on your game, this may mean paying attention to when your enemy uses a certain type of move, noticing when they're most vulnerable, and searching for patterns that make them predictable. But ultimately, by having a few things in mind before a match, it will focus your conscious mind on those key things so you don't get distracted with unnecessary overthinking. So before that match starts, consider, what 2 to 4 aspects will you be making mental notes of? Now, the second tip is your mindset. Because while it may be tempting to think about what's at stake and fall into the trap of overthinking the potential results of the game, it's actually much more effective to approach important matches as if they're just casual games. Now, of course, you still will want to win, but with this mindset, there's nothing special on the line, and as a result, you won't be getting nervous or overextending your abilities. And the final tip is to have a calming pre-game ritual, because you'll get plenty amped up once the game is started, so try to get comfortable and relax beforehand. My greatest piece of advice for this would be to do a quick breathing practice, such as box breathing. Now, this is a tactic that is used by the US Navy SEALs due to how easy and effective it is. The practice basically consists of breathing in slowly for 4 seconds, holding that breath for 4 seconds, breathing out for another 4 seconds, and then holding that for 4 seconds, and then repeating that 4 times. Now, this is super easy to remember and very potent at chilling your nerves before a game. So go ahead and write down these 3 tips and immediately start applying them to important games. Make it a habit to get into that mindset, have that pre-game ritual, and have a conscious focus each game. So in the last video, we talked about the preparation leading up to an important ranked game or tournament and how to use certain tactics to build your confidence. Now, of course, having that confidence is a critical factor for playing at your best, so I highly recommend checking out that video after this one. But once you're actually in the match, you need to be able to maintain that mental resilience when faced with high-stakes tension. Because if you're overwhelmed with worry and anxiety, or just stuck in your own head overthinking the game, then you won't be able to dedicate all your mental resources to just playing. You'll feel like your brain is completely fogged up. But the tips from this video will help you to counter those concerns in the back of your mind that seem to bubble up and fight for mental space. And when you approach the game with this relaxing pre-game ritual and mindset, you'll be able to enter the optimal activation level, allowing those anxious thoughts to just melt away. Suddenly, you'll be able to enter a sort of flow state, pulling off amazing clutch plays and playing at your peak potential. Hey guys, I hope you loved this video, and if you did, then don't forget to leave a comment down below and let me know what your biggest takeaway is. And if you weren't aware yet, we have a fairly new Discord server for all of the eAthlete Labs superfans. So if you want to join the community, then check that out using the link in the description. And of course, this video is brought to you by our very own esports supplements, eAdvantage. Now, eAdvantage is designed to help you get better in-game results and help you to improve your skills faster, and it does this by giving you a focus and energy boost, one beyond any sort of typical energy drink, and of course it does so in a much healthier way. It essentially combines beneficial ingredients that you might find in an energy drink, but adds even better brain-boosting ingredients to it, and then packs it all into a small capsule. As a result, you get a huge focus boost and even a memory boost in a much healthier and even cheaper way. And there are tons of eAthlete Labs fans that have been using eAdvantage, and we've been getting amazing feedback from it. One fan even sent in an email mentioning that he was able to climb 3 ranks in 2 weeks, nearly double his accuracy, and start getting 29.63% more kills due to eAdvantage. So if you want to give it a try and see how much it helps you improve, then use the code eAthlete13 to get 13.5% off your entire order. The link for eAdvantage as well as this code will be in the description down below. But if supplements are not your thing and you still want to help support the channel, then grab yourself some eAthlete merch. You can now get a custom esports jersey, a mouse pad, or even a hoodie so you can start repping eAthlete. And every single merch sale really does help us out. It helps us allocate more time and resources to every single video. So not only will you look great with the merch, but it really does help us out. And the link for the merch store as well as a discount code will also be in the description down below. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.